Welcome once again to Sid Caudle, Christian People's Alliance. Sid, I bet you could get elected the way Andy Burnham's got elected, the coronation job. Some people think he's got a cheek.
Well, at the end of the day, people were fed up with Keir Starmer. And in the Makerfield by-election, people didn't vote Labour. He didn't even mention Labour in his campaign. And I was quite shocked that even at the count, wasn't even wearing a Labour rosette, which, I mean, it's all over then. So, I mean, there's no reason not to wear a Labour rosette at the count, but he didn't. And, and people, I think, in that seat would have voted for reform. But they thought, well, if we vote reform, we're not going to get Starmer out. If we vote Burnham, we'll get Starmer out. And I think that's what people were saying on the doorstep as well. So they voted to get rid of Starmer. And if that's what people want, and at the end of the day, the majority of Labour MPs recognise that if Starmer stays as leader, they're almost certainly going to lose their seats. They see Burnham as a chance of them staying in Parliament. So that's why they've gone for him.
As we speak, Sid, he's announcing that he's going to take 10 years to sort Great Britain out. Can I mention straight away that I don't think we've got 10 years, and that's what I call a real cheek. And some of the things that the papers have got hold of is devolution, devolution, devolution. Come on, Sid. We've had education, education, education. We've seen that fail. And have we not got enough damage done by devolution? And he wants every mayor in every district. He wants everybody having their own private rights. He's not in his right mind.
Well, one of the things that was going on when we were part of the European Union was that they wanted the European Union of the regions, and they wanted to set up regional power. And if you remember, they even had a referendum in the northeast under Prescott to have devolution effectively in the northeast of England, but they said overwhelmingly no, so the thing never got off the ground. So I think what Andy Burnham is now proposing is basically what the EU wants, which is a Britain of the regions. So we have regional power and we undermine Westminster. That's been the agenda for the last 20 years. And that's an agenda that Burnham appears to be picking up. So you might think it's nonsense, but it's part of the EU agenda.
Well, it's gone down in history, the nonsense that it's made in Scotland, where now it's been calculated, apart from some bizarre laws that they've passed and retracted on now, that it costs 5 times more having an MP representative in Scotland, and at the same time, of course, causing havoc in our Parliament in Westminster for Scottish MPs. 5 times it costs more than an English MP. Wales, they're a bit better. It's only 3 times as much there. Sid, it's another layer of bureaucracy. The bureaucrats, the mandarins, they love it.
Well, yes, and you see, you started off by saying, okay, it's going to take 10 years to turn Britain round. Well, what exactly are you going to be doing in the next 10 years? You see, I remember when Margaret Thatcher came to power in 1979, what she did was stop subsidies and set around a programme of capital investment to renew our industry. It was very painful initially, stopping all the subsidies. A lot of people lost their jobs. We had widespread depression, but she built the factories, she built the new steelworks, she built the new car plants. There was an awful lot of capital investment went into our industry, and over the space of, it wasn't 10 years, it was a space of 3 or 4 years, the whole of British industry was transformed. Now, Andy Burnham said he actually opposed that process. He was against it. So what's he going to be doing in this 10 years? If he's going to be doing something like that, where he's going to say, I'm going to have a massive capital injection into British industry and we're going to transform British industry and build new factories, then Great, let's get on with it. Let's get doing it. But he's not. He's not. He's got no plan. He's got no, if he's got no plan, all that's going to happen is that in 10 years' time, we're probably going to be in a worse state than we are now. I mean, devolution isn't a plan.
No, neither is the taxing of the rich, which he's already having a go at. The rich being the southerners that have got some nice plots of land that they've built their house on. And he's going to charge them, it's going to mean another £1,000 in rates, council tax, call it what you want, it's still going to tax the rich.
Well, yes. And what happens when you tax the rich? The rich say, goodbye, goodbye, Great Britain, I'm off. We're going to go to the United States, where the United States is cutting taxes. They're welcoming businesses. There's big cash incentives to set up businesses now in the United States. So that's a much more business-friendly government and much easier place to do business. So I'd rather go somewhere where taxes are being cut than somewhere where taxes are being increased.
Don't forget, Sid, in all this, Robin Hood springs to mind. Also, the fact that Andy Burnham was under the cloak and guidance of the ex nearly Prime Minister, Jeremy Corbyn. We escaped, we dodged a bullet there, didn't we? And he's been tutelaged by this character, and it's coming through. He is definitely more left-wing than Starmer.
Well, possibly, but you see, what Corbyn wanted to do, at least Corbyn was honest, by the way, which Starmer wasn't. But what Corbyn wanted to do was set up a 500 billion investment fund and engage in widespread nationalisation. So he's going to nationalise all the water, but also going to nationalise all the trains, and everything was going to be nationalised. He was going to drive out all private investors from the health service, which was going to have a terrible effect on the health service, by the way. I mean, Corbyn would have destroyed the NHS by driving out all private investors from the NHS. If people don't know what I'm talking about, the way the system works at the moment, you have private companies that do, for instance, provide all the meals in hospitals, that clean all the sheets, that do all the cleaning, that clean the wards, and provide service machines which need to be serviced every so often. All that is done by private companies, and they do it far more efficiently than the old system. The old system was, in each hospital you had a kitchen that cooked the food, and each hospital had its own employees who cleaned the hospital, and also its own employees that clean the linen. That was the old system, far less efficient than having a private company that just does it across the board for all the hospitals. So, and also they do it, by the way, for hotels as well. So Corbyn wanted to go back to the old system. Just terrible, terrible. But the main thing was nationalisation. Nationalisation has always been terrible for industry. And he would have taken us basically towards the whole communist system where everything is owned by the state. The state runs everything extremely badly. We have roaring inflation and the whole system collapses. That's what happened in Venezuela. I mean, they had Chavez come in there with his communist system. Everything was nationalized. And the result was over 1,000% inflation. And by the way, Venezuela had a lot of oil. So it was actually a very rich country before Chavez came into power. But he destroyed the economy, completely destroyed the economy. And the result was that the whole health service collapsed there, so that the hospitals ceased to function. And it's interesting now with this terrible earthquake that's going on in Venezuela. I saw one report saying, "Oh, there's been a lack of investment in the hospitals over the last 10 years." It was because the communist system destroyed the health service. That's why.
Nationalisation, Sid, who would you well, I say who will you nationalise? It's not as simple as that. People have got in mind number one and number two, railways. Number two is the water system. Should they be nationalised?
No. See, I remember what British Rail was like, and it was absolutely terrible, frankly. See, since the system was privatized, we've got the trails, the train services are way better. They've been absolutely transformed. And I travel a lot on the trains, and I enjoy traveling on the trains now. I mean, back in the 1980s or 1970s, I mean, I used to travel on trains then, and it was just terrible. I mean, the whole service was just abysmal. And as for water, you see there was under nationalisation, there was no investment in water because water was in the queue behind the hospitals, behind schools, behind military equipment, whatever else you needed. And all this stuff was far more important than investing in water, in water pipes. So water pipes never got any investment. And this is one of our problems that we've got Victorian water pipes that keep leaking all the time. But we've had a system now under privatization of pipe renewal, water pipe renewal, that's been going on for a long time. And the water pipes now are dramatically improved compared with what they were like under nationalisation. We've still got a problem with the sewage system. It goes into the same system as the storm system. So if you happen to have a storm, all the water goes into the sewage system, and then it overflows into the sea or into rivers. And that's designed so that you don't have sewage flowing in the streets. So if your emergency situation is that it goes into the sea or into the rivers. Now people hate that. They say, oh, it's terrible. Sewage going into the rivers, going into the sea, it's terrible. But it's a lot better than sewage flowing down the streets. But in order to change the system, there's billions and billions involved. And they're not going to do it. No nationalisation is going to do it at all. It's going to make the system worse, far worse.
Who's pushing for nationalisation? Is it the trade unions?
Well, it's socialism, isn't it? Socialism is like, oh, we've got a problem, nationalise it, nationalise everything. Well, the other thing I don't like, by the way, is private companies are making a profit out of the water system. They're making a profit. They don't think that, oh, wait a minute, maybe they've invested enormous amounts of money into the system and they're actually making it way more efficient than it was previously. They don't think like that. And they just think, oh, profit, terrible. Stop the profit. I mean, it's just the whole idea of the economy is just utter nonsense, as I've already shown.
The king, moving on, has decided to confess what he's earning. And it's a lot of money. And what he owns is worth a fair few shekels, isn't it? And having said that, he's going to leave Buck House. Well, he wants it always, doesn't he?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not into the politics of jealousy. In the end of the day, the king is the king. And, I don't really care how much money he's got, how much money he's spending, and the fact how much tax he's paying. I don't really care. End of the day, he's the king. And you expect the king to be spending a lot of money and to be living on a lot of money, frankly. And who cares? The only people who care are people who are into the politics of jealousy, and I'm not.
Well, it has been maybe fairly stated that when our tourist industry starts, which is most of the year in London, people want to see that flag flying over Buckingham Palace, which means the king is there. If in America the president never stepped foot in the White House, then people, they reckon, would not visit the White House anywhere near as much. Same thing's going to happen in Buck House. The Queen put up with it. She had the East Wing there, made it a bit more comfortable and homely, I suppose. But he wants, I repeated always, he's got plenty of houses to choose from, but it's going to affect tourism. That's his responsibility, surely, or one of them.
Well, they have opened up Buckingham Palace, which in the past, you could never visit. Now there is a visitor's entrance, So, it's they are making money for actually showing people around Buckingham Palace. So, I don't know. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the king can live where he likes. I'm not particularly bothered.
Well, there you go. The politics of being a king, we'll come back to that in the near future, because one has to think that if he was a leader of an of industry and was earning not quite that much, but a very healthy wage, that person, leader of industry, wouldn't be required to divulge all his memberships, all his ownerships in detail. So, therefore, why should the king?
Oh, the king isn't in the same situation, but frequently you'll find that the leaders in industry are expected to divulge everything. I mean, this is our modern society. You have regulators that regulate absolutely everything and insist on knowing everything about your private details. I mean, when I was an independent financial advisor, like, I mean, I guess you were as well. Everything had to be disclosed. It's like, the Financial Conduct Authority wanted to know absolutely every detail about everything you're doing. I mean, it's that's modern life, I'm afraid.
Is it all part of socialism, jealousy?
Um, well, it's not jealousy, it's regulation, and I think we are. I mean, we have made progress in the sense that I remember the time when, I mean, for financial advice, for instance, you could just go and tell somebody, you need some life insurance, you need some savings. Let's just do a policy, fill in here, you fill the form in, you pay the premium, you get the business. They moved from there to, you've got to do a financial review and establish somebody's financial circumstances before you make any recommendations, um, which was obviously a much better system. But you also had the problems of fraud within financial services. So you had mis-selling, and we had the pension mis-selling scandal, we had the endowment mis-selling scandal, and so on and so forth. Now, I wasn't involved in any of that, by the way. I mean, I was a financial advisor through all those schemes, but I never engaged in pension mis-selling. I never engaged in endowment mis-selling. I do remember on one occasion, I actually came back to the office. I'm telling my manager that I'd sold a mortgage with some life insurance attached, and he said to me, "Why did you sell an endowment?" I said, "Because it wasn't appropriate for the customer." At the end of the day, if a customer wanted an endowment, fine, but I'd tell them what the options were, which was the right process, where other people were just pushing endowments on every single customer, which was the wrong process. So, we have had mis-selling scandals, and it's right that you have regulators that are there to a degree. But I think it's gone too far. I think regulation's gone too far across the board. I think what we need is a professional standards authority that makes sure there's high professional standards operating in every industry. So you have qualifications, and anybody that's engaging in fraud is struck off and unable to operate within an industry because they've engaged in fraud. I mean, obviously, we can have a situation where people are restored, but fraud has got to be stamped out from every industry. So we need professional standards, but we don't need micro regulation. I mean, there's far, far too much money spent on regulation.
Headline here for you, Sid. Nigel Farage.
Mm.
Yes, we lost Makerfield, but reform is bigger than one by-election. He's at the top. Now he's going down rapidly, according to the Observer, which we must confess is left-leading rag. Actually, Burnham's overtaken him. Is this just part of the disinformation?
Well, that is not being borne out by elections because in the last round of by elections, Reform actually won 7 by elections, taking seats from the Labour Party. So I think that is wishful thinking from the Observer rather than actual reality. As I said before, the Makerfield by-election was a unique situation because people there voted to get rid of Starmer. So that's not going to be a situation in a general election. If we have a general election, people will choose between Labour, Conservative, Reform, whatever. They'll choose the party that they want to be running the country. And I don't think it's necessarily going to be Reform. I think the Conservatives could do much better than a lot of people anticipate. But at the moment, Burnham is an unknown quantity. So people will reserve judgment. And if people are happy with what he does and the policies he puts forward, then people will vote for him. If they're not, they won't. But at the moment, to argue that, oh, Burnham is now more popular than Reform is not being borne out by by-elections, and I don't think is reality.
One thing that is reality, Sid, is NAMP, NAMP, and that stands for Muslim Police Officers Association, apparently. And it sparked a lot of furore in that it's defending Hamas. It labels the IDF as a Zionist terrorist group, all sorts of things. And you think, oh, well, they've got a view, but have they? They're saying hatred of Muslims and stripping Muslims of their humanity, and they're in the police force to make sure that redress is there. The group maintains formal ties with at least 16 police forces in England and Wales. The document that they've just issued actually is teaching us, as if we needed it, about October the 7th massacre. And it's even saying and claiming falsely that children were involved and killings of Palestinian children were involved. That is just not the truth. Sid, it's getting everywhere. Why is that organisation being formally accepted by half our police force? Because I mentioned 16, but there are others all that take advice and counsel from them.
Well, in principle, I don't have a problem with the Muslim Police Officers Association because we've had Christian police officers associations for a very long period of time who've operated within the police service. So it's not the principle of the Muslim Police Officers Association, it's what this organization is saying and doing. That is what is completely unacceptable. Now, the police should be impartial. And what's happened over the last 10 years or so is that various people have said we've got to have more Muslims in the police office, in the police force, we've got to have more women, promote more women, we've got to have more ethnic minorities, and so on and so forth. So rather than focusing on good standards of policing, they're trying to get certain types of people into the police force. Now, if you do that without taking any notice of what these people stand for, then that's what's going to lead to these problems, what has led to these problems. And that's what led to the terrible situation with Henry Novak's murder, because the police, instead of focusing on the situation in front of them, were looking at racism and, you believe the Sikh, you don't believe the white person. And that, frankly, is something that's become totally unacceptable now within our police force. And is the principles that we need to get back to, the principles of good policing, and stop this whole process of, well, we need more Muslims in the police force. It's that is the root of the problem we're facing, frankly.
We'll relate back to Andy Burnham again, but across the Atlantic, where Trump has made one or two comments, and the last one, he was asked, are you going to come over and see Andy Burnham? And his answer was, no, but I think we're probably of a different persuasion. And reminding Mr. Burnham that he's got the whole of the oil industry knocking on his door saying, how can we drill in Britain? How can we drill in the North Sea? How we can drill and frack on land? There's a big oil gusher under the North Sea still. and there's fracking and shale gas, of course, on land. And he's saying the same thing. Every oil company comes to see him, he says, about having access to Britain's oil fields, declaring that the country, United Kingdom, is dying. Is he right?
Yes. See, Trump is no fool, but he has the ability to get on with um, people that are of very different persuasion from him. I mean, when Mamdani came to see him, I mean, it was like, they got on, he got on very well with Trump. They had a nice conversation, had a polite conversation. But he totally disagrees with everything that Mamdani stands for and everything that he's doing in New York. I'm quite sure that Trump will be well capable of having a perfectly good civil conversation with Andy Burnham. But he's not going to beat around the bush. He's going to tell Andy Burnham point blank, you need to be drilling oil in the North Sea. And if you don't, then you're just wasting money. And apparently, Starmer actually wanted to start drilling in the North Sea, but Ed Miliband said no, and it wasn't going to agree to it. He wanted to drill in the North Sea to pay for the increase in defence spending. And if he'd actually pushed through that policy, he may well still be prime minister now. It's because of the fact his defence secretary resigned, which really was the beginning of the end. But instead of being honest, of course, Starmer's dishonesty is a big problem. Instead of being honest about what he was doing and what he was saying and what he was wanting, it was all sort of like he was pretending that everything was great, everything was hunky-dory, everything was fantastic. Oil is flowing from the North Sea as much as it's ever been. We're increasing defence spending. Defence spending is fantastic. Well, actually, the reality is there's been no increase in defence spending at all. It's still 2.3%, which is what he inherited. He said he's going to put it up, but he hasn't actually put it up. And we need defence spending. So you see, the thing is, if Andy Burnham goes to Donald Trump and says to him, I'm going to resume drilling in the North Sea. I'm going to use the money to pay for defence. We're going to increase our defence spending. It's going up immediately from 2.3 to 2.6 with the revenues from the North Sea. And Trump and Burnham are going to get on brilliantly. If Burnham goes to Trump and says, no drilling in the North Sea, we're not increasing defence spending for at least another year. We haven't got the money. Then Trump and Burnham are going to fall out, and they're not going to be able to get on very well.
Starmer had a mind of his own, but did he? Was it the left wing really that stopped him getting rid of Ed?
Well, Starmer was dishonest, but he couldn't face the truth. So if he, you're probably right. There's probably things that Starmer wanted to do that he didn't do. But one of the classic things about Starmer's time in office was his U-turns. I mean, I think we had about 25 U-turns in the end. So he'd announce one thing and then he'd change his mind. And as regards following the manifesto, I think he completely ignored the manifesto. But he was trying to govern by consensus. He was trying to listen to people and say, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And every day he'd listen to his advisors. His advisors would say different things, and he'd change his mind according to what his advisors were saying. So we had no sense of direction, no sense of policy going forward. He was just making a case that everything is wonderful, everything is hunky dory. I'm doing brilliantly. The economy is going brilliantly. Everything's increasing. The health service is wonderful. Defence is in the best situation it's ever been. Everything was a complete disaster under the Tories. But since I've been in office, everything has improved dramatically. That was what he was saying. But it wasn't true. And everyone knew it wasn't true. And everyone could see, obviously, it wasn't true, which is why he was massively, I mean, at one point, I think minus 60% in the opinion polls, but I think in the end he was minus 40 odd. So he had about 16% support, but about 60% of people saying, no, I don't approve of what he's doing. Because he was obviously what he was saying wasn't true.
Quite an achievement. We're going to go on to other achievements finally. Out of time completely, as usual. And we're going to look at a little bit of cricket, a little bit of football, and we're going to look at the pundits. And they've come in for a lot of criticism. BBC not even attending the event, of course. ITV showing them the way it's done. But did they? Keane, Neville, really criticised. One newspaper actually had the headline, no wonder they didn't make it as managers if that's the way they would treat people. In other words, they dive in at the deep end. So there you go. On the other side, the Beeb side, Rooney and Richards have been criticised. Why don't they speak English? What are they drivelling on about? And that hides other things mildly about the number of ladies in attendance, because, of course, you have to be representative with all the DEI implications, especially if you're the BBC. And I really was amused, Sid, with one interview that was mirrored over several occasions, actually post cricket, where you've got, and people think cricket's a soft game. It ain't. It's tougher than football. You try being standing up there in the field in India at 42 degrees with high humidity for the whole day and then running up to bowl. There ain't no thing tougher. And you look at the stature of the cricketers, most of them are well over 6 foot and they're big guys. And when you put them into commentary positions when their career's finished and they stand next to a 4'8" lady saying, how did you feel when you scored 100? I mean, Sid, we've lost our way.
Well, it's an interesting observation. My observation would be, as far as the football is concerned, that there's been too much, frankly. I mean, I enjoyed watching last season, particularly the Arsenal success and the champions getting to the Champions League final and the success of a lot of teams. And obviously, we had only a very short break, and then the World Cup starts. And now we've just got too much football on television, frankly, every day, football, football, football. And I watched most of the game between Panama and England, and I thought England played a lot better. I watched most of the game with Ghana, and I thought that was a very dour game. The Panama game was much more exciting, and in Panama were counter-attacking very, very fast. And to start with, England weren't dealing with it, but later on in the game, they managed to get back quickly in order to get Panama's counterattacks to fizz them out. But I thought it was an interesting game to watch. But I'm afraid I can't just keep watching every game. You're right, by the way, about man management, because Keane started off very well with some very good ideas, but he proved to be a bad man manager. And I think Wayne Rooney was the same. I think a lot of them didn't know how to man manage, frankly. And man management is a very, very important part of management. And you do see it with Guardiola, who I think is recognized as probably the best manager in the world. You notice the way he'll put his arm around players and talk to them and encourage them. And it's not all about tactics and and where you position players. It's also about putting putting your arm around players and giving them enthusiasm and encouraging them and supporting them and getting the best out of them. And that's a very, very important part of management.
And for pundits, of course, I mean, you look at the quality of the pundits these days
Mm.
and commentators compared with years past. I mean, you look at the cricket, it was an
Mm.
institution just listening to Radio 4
Mm.
cricket commentary. You got the top people, the top experienced ex-professionals, and boy, did it make a difference. I was reminded actually of a story this last weekend about Brian Clough, who
Mm.
finished his days doing punditry. And he didn't take prisoners, of course, while he was in the job, nor as a commentator. And somebody once asked him, apparently, and I'll read this, the reporter asked whether, as a manager of Nottingham Forest, he will ever appoint a coach. And he said, we have a very good coach. It comes every Friday and takes us to where we want to go. Now, that is class, Sid, isn't it? You don't get that.
Brian Clough was a brilliant manager, but he didn't like the media. So he would be very cut and thrust with the media, but behind the scenes, he was very perceptive and an excellent manager. If I might say about the cricket, and one thing I've noticed with this latest Test match is the way that Stokes, unlike Joe Root, when the team is doing badly, is able to lift them, and that is a very, very important part of captaincy. You see, this last Test match, England started terribly and New Zealand had over 300 for naught in the first innings. But Stokes lifted his team and got them back into it, and he did it brilliantly. I was very disappointed the way that their batting collapsed. I think that was disastrous, frankly. And I don't know what's going to happen now. I mean, it looks as though they've tried to pretend it's a 2020 match, the way England have gone about their second innings. And whether they'll manage to get anything back today remains to be seen. But the likelihood is that New Zealand are going to win this test. But you did see Stokes lift the team in a way that Joe wrote in the second test. You saw him with his head down. And it was almost like the captain was telling everyone this is a disaster. And you can't be doing that. The person I think they should have brought in, by the way, in the second test is Johnny Bairstow, who has proven to be a very good captain for Yorkshire, a very good batsman, and they needed a different wicketkeeper because Smith was unavailable, and they should have brought him in as to strengthen the batting and as captain for that one test. And I think the whole team would have performed very, very differently. The position of captain is very important. Stokes is now saying that he's giving up international cricket. They need to bring in a good captain because if they don't, then the team will struggle.
Agreed. Let me finally, before we leave the cricket field, mention, well, I'll read you a statement or a suggestion about Ben Stokes. Bizarre, quite frankly. Was it his planned farewell? A strange, narcissistic, self-promotional, colourful language, and at the end, baseball that failed. Test cricket is disciplined for the extremely talented and possibly for self-effacing role models.
Well, yeah, but you can play Test cricket different ways, and Australia played Test cricket very aggressively. But I think Stokes has done pretty well overall as captain. I mean, Joe Root in Australia. I mean, he was when he was captain. I mean, they just lost every Test match. At least Stokes won one Test match in Australia. But no, I don't think his tenure's been a disaster by a long chalk. But we wait to see what comes next.
Yes. Watch the proverbial space. Sid, thank you so much. We'll see you very shortly.
Thanks.